In this episode, we can talk about where you can place your microphone for the best audio quality when you're live streaming. One question we've heard a fair bit is, where should I position my microphone when I'm live streaming? And some people also say, I don't want the microphone showing. I want it hidden. So let's talk about four main options that I'm going to discuss here and give you some samples for each of them. Number one, let's talk about a boom microphone, which would be boomed up above you outside of the frame. Number two, a dynamic cardioid microphone, which would be kind of more like a broadcast microphone that you'd have up close to you. Next up, a condenser cardioid microphone, like what we have here, but that could also be a large diaphragm condenser microphone, like you would typically use for voiceover. And then finally, let's talk about a lavalier microphone. So first up, a sample of each one. Here's a sample with a boom microphone. It's boomed just out of the frame right here. This is the Sennheiser MKH8050. There it is. Move it just out of the frame there. I'm using a big desk stand. Now, these have a couple of advantages. Number one, they're not in the frame, so you don't have to see them. So your audience doesn't have to see them. So that's a big important thing for many people. Second of all, boom microphones have a relatively natural sound. They sound kind of like real life, so that's really pretty good if that's what you're going for. Now, in terms of cons, they do pick up a little bit more room sound. You're probably noticing a little bit of that, and especially if you have sound reflecting off of a big desk like I have here, and a big computer screen, which I have right here. So this can be a little bit problematic that way, and also if you have noise in the room, especially if you've got a lot of fans for computers and other equipment, this is going to be more likely to pick up some of that as well, so you got to be careful there. Now, one other potential issue, although it's totally surmountable issue, is that you can create shadows sometimes if you put the microphone between your light and yourself, so you just have to be careful and mindful about where you put the microphone relative to where you put the light. Next up, let's talk about lavalier microphones. So in this case, I have a lavalier microphone hidden just under my shirt here at my sternum. And the great thing about lavalier microphones is you're not going to see them. And another thing that's really great about them is if you move around, they will follow you. So that's pretty good as well. So microphone technique from that standpoint is not going to be as important. Now there's some cons. First of all, lavaliers sound like lavaliers. They sound like a microphone taped to your body because that's exactly what they are. So they're not generally as natural sounding, but you can apply some EQ if you're into that. If you have a live stream setup where you have somewhere in the signal chain where you can add equalization, that's an option. And then one other risk is that they can pick up clothing rustle a little bit too. So if you do hide it underneath your clothing, there's a chance you could pick that up. Something like that. So just have to be careful about that. And then they do have a tendency to pick up reflected sound as well. They have an omnidirectional polar pattern, meaning they pick up sound from all sides. Now, because it's attached to your body, it's not generally going to pick up a lot of sound from behind you because your body's blocking that. But any reflected sound off of desks and computer monitor screens, it does have a tendency to pick those up as well. So just something to keep in mind. If you're not going to be at a desk and not in front of a computer, then maybe this could be a pretty good option. In this sample here, we're using a dynamic cardioid microphone. It's a broadcast microphone, namely the Shure SM7B, very popular amongst live streamers. The reason, well, part of the reason at least, this is very popular is because it has a cardioid polar pattern, but you also have to work up pretty close on it. And the benefit that that provides is that it is quite good at not picking up a lot of ambient room sound. So if you're recording in a space that isn't acoustically treated, that doesn't necessarily sound that great, then this can be a really good choice because, again, it's going to pick up mostly your voice and not a lot of the room sound. And people that record for the first time or live stream for the first time are often pretty surprised to find out that their spare bedroom or their computer room or whatever it is that they're using doesn't sound all that great. There's a lot of ambient noise. There's sound bouncing off of the walls. And also there's sound bouncing off of the desk and the computer screen in front of you. So there are just a lot of things that kind of make its way back into microphones, except for microphones like this. So that's what kind of the big benefit of this. Now, it also has a very rich low-end kind of broadcast sound to it, which a lot of people like as well, especially if you work up really close on it like this. Now, there are a few cons. First of all, it's going to be in the frame. You basically have to have it close enough so it will be in the frame, but you can position it in places where it's not so intrusive, like, for example, right here. You could also maybe move it off to the side just a little bit. I just have a desk microphone stand here, and this works pretty well. So it makes it so you don't have to necessarily conceal your face. And you have a lot of options for how you can do it there. So there is that con. And then also, if you're not careful about microphone technique, then it can be problematic as well. So if you move around a lot, for example, if you move off to the side like this, you'll notice that the sound changes pretty dramatically. So you do have to be cognizant and kind of stay on axis, if you will, on the front of the microphone. One thing that I really like about this microphone is that, again, for many of us that are live streaming, we're on a desk. We've got a computer screen here. Sound reflects off of those hard surfaces like crazy, comes right back. This microphone does, of all of them, I think the best job of not picking up that reflected sound, which is a better experience for your audience. Here we have a condenser cardioid microphone. In this particular case, it's an Earthworks SR314. There are lots of different options out there. You could also use large diaphragm condenser microphones. Let's talk about the pros and the cons of each of these. So first of all, they're pretty good at rejecting room noise if you use them up relatively closely. So if you do have a lot of fans and computers and things like that, then this can be helpful from that standpoint. A lot of them will have a little bit of a broadcast sound, especially the large diaphragm condensers, where they'll have a kind of a rich bass response that sounds really nice if you're into that sound. And then finally, you do have a little bit more freedom to move around a little bit relative to dynamic microphones. These are a little bit more forgiving, and they can pick up a little bit more room sound than a dynamic cardioid. So the cons here, of course, they're visible in frame typically. These also don't eliminate quite as much room noise or ambience noise as a dynamic cardioid microphone does. What we did not talk about here is specific microphones you can use. If you want some reviews and comparisons of different microphones, you can check up in the corner here. We've got a whole bunch of different reviews, a whole bunch of different comparisons that'll help you kind of narrow down something that fits within your budget and the type of microphone based on where you want to place it for your live streaming. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave those down below. And if you've not already subscribed, make sure you do that. And we'll be sure to get you more great videos on how to improve your lighting and sound for video. Talk to you soon.